We don't have leaders anymore. We have influencers, and influencers can't serve the same purpose that leaders do. A lot
Right.
of when I listen to Jordan Peterson, I think of this all the time. Like, we have a crisis of authority. And it's weird too because thought leaders are spawning thought leaders. Like Vaush, uh, Vaush was
You're not
birthed
gonna
out
like
of
the answer.
Destiny's head. How? Hold on. There's got to be some level of delusion going on here, because how do you make the
Some level.
transition? How do you make the transition? And God bless his soul, Sargon tried to make this transition too, from from YouTube pundit to actual politics, which I think is noble, because trying to actually change the world. Politicians are the ones that do it. That's your avenue towards real, tangible change in people's material conditions. He wasn't able to do it because he made a joke on Twitter. Yeah, yeah. This is the power of ideology. That's why I've changed, man. I went from not liking philosophy to the total respect for how dangerous philosophy is.
Oh, and it sounds like you still don't like it. You just think it's dangerous.
The woke stuff is super scary. It is super
Hmm.
scary because you just realize, you hang out with enough people and you realize this is animating this person.
Right.
This way of looking at the world is animating this person. We'd talked about doing the Charlie. Well, I don't know Charlie's last name. Charlie, he's the Charisma on
Charisma on
Command
command
guy.
guy.
Yeah, he did an interview with Vaush, and Vaush, you could see in that interview Vaush being completely animated by his ideology, and that's one of the things I
Hmm.
found super fascinating about it. But at the same time, you could see Charlie being totally animated by his philosophy, and they have a conflicting philosophy, in that, you should always do good in the world. That's kind of Charlie's philosophy. I think Vaush is a little flexible on that one, on that but they share this ideology that you can't do good in the world until you grab attention. So while Charlie doesn't necessarily like what Vosh is doing to grab attention, he respects the fact that that must be done. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do good in the world.
Hmm.
So, and you and I are the perfect examples of how conflicted we are. Like, if we had, like, Tim has so much power to do good in the world, far more than us, because of his popularity and
But
his,
he doesn't though. This
because of
is
the
the problem.
audience.
Right. This is the problem that this is the rationalization everyone makes. And this is the trap.
Mm-hmm.
They say, if I get more power,
Mm-hmm.
I can do more good because I'll have a bigger audience. And so they'll say, okay, well, I'm going to start selling out my morals, right? I'm going to give one-sided takes, or I'm going to be like Vaush. I'm going to say like very controversial, hyperbolic things in order to draw attention to myself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you say, okay, one day when I have a large enough audience, I'm going to change, right? I'm going to like, impart my wisdom, impart the goodness into the world to them, and I'm going to get the audience to change. But that change never occurs, because the what they don't understand is that the audience becomes their jailer, becomes the thing that shackles them down.
That's a great way to put it, man.
And like, because Tim, like I don't know if I don't think this is true with Tim. I think it is true with Vosh. I don't think Tim has made this idea. I think Tim's consciously trying to improve his
Thread the needle.
to. No, I think Tim is consciously trying to be popular and trying to grow his audience. I think that's intentional. I don't think he's doing it with this idea that he's going to bring about some positive moral change in the world, and that justifies him doing bad stuff.
I
I think that
disagree,
is
but
true with Vosh. I think he's saying the ends justify the means. If I can sucker people into becoming communists, it justifies everything, because at the end of the day, that's for the greater good. Um, but the problem, what you said, is that with Tim couldn't suddenly change on a dime and try to give nuanced takes to his audience or something. He could, but he would just slowly start to lose his audience. It's not like all those people aren't. They're not going to suddenly start. He's not going to change a lot of minds, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean,
so
we're
oh, go
seeing
ahead.
this. We saw this with a lot of the Trump stuff. So many people would be so on board with certain public figures as long as they were towing some sort of line. And then the second they start going against the line, they turn on them. Actually, a better example of Trump stuff is Bernie Sanders. Okay. This is actually the perfect example. You had Jimmy Dore, Kyle Klinsky, all the lefties, all the commies. They were so on board with Bernie Sanders. They're like, Bernie Sanders is the way, Bernie or bust, blah, 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 blah. And then Bernie says we should support Joe Biden for president. And all the leftists,
he lost them all.
He lost them all. They all turn on him. He doesn't convert them. Even though he was their savior, he was their golden boy, they don't turn with him. They turn on him.
So Brett Weinstein talks about this. But before I go into that, the Tim thing, I think the Tim's greater good is fighting the media. I think Tim does ultimately think the media has changed into political propaganda. We need a functioning media. I think Brett Weinstein would agree on it. If
that's what he believes, I think that makes Tim look so much worse. I don't think that's what he believes, but if it does, that makes him look so much worse.
He's very careful, and I do believe that he is selling copium to people who want to believe. What you're talking about, Brett, completely pins with this argument that we don't have leaders anymore. We have influencers, and influencers can't serve the same purpose that leaders do. A lot of when I listen to Jordan Peterson, I think of this all the time. Like, we have a crisis of authority. The authority foundation, the moral foundation in respect for authority has not been nurtured in our society in so long that nobody has respect for any authority. They have respect for certain authorities, those authorities that fall into this influencer category, that say the things that they like to hear. But as soon as those people say the things that they don't like to hear, their authority is taken away from them, and they are chastised. So the audience becoming your jailer is like the perfect example of that, because they're trapped by their audience, and they have to continue to satiate, just like the rat that runs up to the cocaine spigot and like just does cocaine the whole time. They're just running up to these influencers for the cocaine. But as soon as the cocaine stops, I don't like you anymore. You're not my authority. You're not my leader. You're some influencer that I liked back when. And you even it's so funny that the kids go to some different influencer and they're like, oh, I can't believe I fell for that charlatan. I was a huge fan of Tim Pool for like 2 years. I fell into that trap, which is just kind of the same thing as saying, yeah, I was addicted to cocaine for a while. Like, the problem is really you. It's not that person. And the problem is society wide. We need leaders. Like, if Vaush was working himself into a role where he could be a leader, where he could say to his audience, listen, this is a hard truth that you need to understand and respect, and he could keep his audience, then we'd be in a completely different situation. But I don't necessarily like how we're crafting a world where that doesn't necessarily seem like it's ever going to be a possibility.
No, I think that's very true. And I think it's also a product of, because of the internet, there's so many different influencers and quote unquote thought leaders for people to turn to. So it's easy to dump one person and jump on the next person, which maybe that wasn't really a choice, pre-internet days.
Yeah, you had 5 thought leaders and you thought, oh, now I'm back to the other thought leader I was at a minute ago. Now it's like I have a million thought leaders.
Right, exactly. It's endless. I mean, there was a very interesting tweet thread I saw today where there was some guy who's communist saying how he feels like himself and a lot of other communists he knows started off as anti-SJWs. And you're like, that seems so counterintuitive. And they're like, oh, I got sucked into the right-wing pipeline by Sargon and Chris Reagan and Shoeonhead and all these people. And now I'm, free of that, and I'm just a fucking commie. And it's just like what you're saying. It's like, oh, they just jumped from one, influencer to the next influencer.
This is the big problem. Brett talks about this relatively consistently, and what is the solution to that? You're the big brain on the show, Sitch. Put some thought into this. How do we turn this ship around? We're in such a weird situation. And it's weird too, because thought leaders are spawning thought leaders. Like Vaush was
You're not
birthed
gonna
out
like
of
the answer.
Destiny's head. Like
It's ironic.
Destiny. Oh, you got
Well,
an answer already? Holy
well,
shit.
I don't have an answer, but there's two problems here, and this is why I don't know if the answer is, if there is an answer, if it's solvable, which is these people are driven by two things: the profit motive, okay,
Yes. Yeah.
which would seem to play into the communist idea, but then there's still, even if you remove the profit motive, they still be driven by the status and climbing the
Status. Yeah.
hierarchy,
Yep.
which I don't think you can ever get rid of, ever. Even though the communists pretend you could. And I guess that's the irony of Vaush and all the communists vying for money and status, is that they're claiming that they want to do away with the very thing that drives their entire life at the moment.
I never hear anything of Vaush that isn't somehow a status play, which is just so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and
He's
I,
going to flatten the hierarchies, Adam. The guy who's more hierarchy status driven than anyone else on the internet is going to flatten the hierarchies. Look, just you wait.
that's not good. That's not, that's patently ridiculous. Everyone can see it's ridiculous. That's why it's so funny.
No, his audience doesn't see that it's ridiculous. They eat that shit up.
Yeah. Oh man. I have some sympathy for the Vosh audience because I mean I've worked enough dumb jobs to know. Man, you want hope. I'm not a.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, this, I guess the first thing that brought us off on this tangent where you're talking about the energy, I think a big problem is no one that I've heard really conceptualizes properly what's happening in these situations. And that's that human beings are basically bags of blood and organs that run on biochemical energy. Scott Adams actually does sort of talk about this in a little bit, where he says people will always go where the energy is. And that's very true. People are drawn to energy. They need something that gives them that biochemical energy, that motivation to press on every day.
Keep
And
going.
that's right. And so when you have someone like Vaush, who is, that's another reason why these ideologies are so enticing. It makes you tired. It makes you upset to have to realize that life is filled with these very complicated moral questions that don't really have clear answers. Like, no one wants, your brain is not programmed to be comfortable existing in the limbo, in the in-between state. Your brain is programmed or designed by evolution to want to categorize things into neat little boxes.
Yeah.
And so you gain literal motivational biochemical energy by believing that you can classify things in these neat little ethical boxes and follow the ideologies of socialism or whatever.
In the Thomas Sowell book on Marxism, he lays out how Marxism is the perfect ideology to drive people to power. It's the perfect ideology for dictators to use. And I couldn't help thinking of Vaush in that situation. Like Vaush knows, I don't know if he knows it consciously or just intuitively, but he knows that that's a path to power. The interview, another fascinating thing about that interview was Charlie and I don't know the other guy. They run the channel Charisma on Command. They do a podcast. They did one with Brett Weinstein too. I encourage everyone to listen to, which was great. But they're ultimately wanting to be wealthy to do good in the world, like deliver water to villages in Africa, right? The ultimate good,
Really?
obviously.
That's
Clean
interesting.
water, yeah. We can do so much good by doing this. And Vosh's
I had no
idea of
idea.
doing good, Vaush wants to put together a super PAC so that he can get more Democrats. I'm like, oh my God, this is
He said this
like,
in their conversation.
yes. Obviously, obviously Vaush is interested in being president of the United States, two-term president of the United States. Like Vaush's goal is power. Power. That's what he wants. He totally wants. He wants to be the most. He wants to be PewDiePie, and after PewDiePie, he wants to be senator, and after senator, he wants to be like. He's already thinking about the super PAC. How? Hold on. There's got to be some level of delusion going on here because how do you make the transition? How do you make the transition? And God bless his soul, Sargon tried to make this transition too, from YouTube pundit to actual politics, which I think is noble, because trying to actually change the world, politicians are the ones that do it. That's your avenue towards real tangible change in people's material conditions. He wasn't able to do it because he made a rape joke on Twitter. How is Vaush going to do it when he's advocating for like child? I don't even want to say
Well,
it.
when he said that they should nuke Israel, I think that's the
That
comment
too. That too. There's a half a
especially
dozen.
in America.
We've had this conversation before on other shows where we've talked about, in the world now, the incendiary stuff is so incendiary that if you don't have a degree from Harvard or any kind of street cred, if you weren't Bernie Sanders, a high-level member of the Bernie Sanders campaign, if you don't have some kind of accolades to break through the noise, you're making incendiary comments on YouTube. Vaush has done this very successfully, but how do you ever walk those incendiary comments back in an environment where you can walk out of the DMV and casually use the N-word in jubilation, and it comes back to haunt you 10 years later?
I don't think Sargon's rape joke, and I don't even think Vaush's nuke Israel joke or comment, I guess it wasn't a joke, it was a statement. I don't think that's going to hurt. I don't think that's what hurt Sargon, and I don't think that would potentially hurt Vaush in the future, because you making a crazy comment only hurts you if it's a comment that your side doesn't like. And that's kind of what Trump tapped in on. He's like, I can say all the crazy shit I want as long as it's playing to my side.
Yeah, but he lost. You're on the old, like the media savaged him. The media used those to defeat him successfully. The media defeated Sargon in the same way, but go ahead. But what I was going to say is, I think the real reason Sargon lost wasn't because of the rape joke. I think it's because he ran 10 years too early. I don't think the mainstream public is on board with an internet YouTube personality becoming a politician yet. And they're not going to be until people my age and younger become the mainstream. Then you'll see the shift occur. Because these are the people that change everything. Right, because they're the people that grew up watching YouTube. And so to them, seeing a YouTuber become president isn't going to be a weird thing. That's like their Ronald Reagan. They're like, I know this guy. PewDiePie. He's my favorite. He's the one that got me down the alt-right rabbit hole.
Exactly. So 10 to 15 years, that's when you're going to see, I think, the changeover. We're going to start to see internet personalities be able to enter politics.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show, and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.